Welcome to the interview. I'm Susan Lee MacDonald. Today's guest is the renowned choreographer and performance artist, Tai Soon Burgess. I'm in front of his house ready to meet him for an interview, and I can't wait for you to explore the world of modern dance with me today. Come on and take a look at where I'm going. Hi, Dana. I'm doing great. So great to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. So great to see you guys. What a great home.
Thank you.
Tai Soon Burgess is an internationally renowned choreographer. Born to visual artist parents, Dana was exposed to creative art from a young age. While his brother showed talent in visual arts, Dana became immersed in dance. Dana began ballet relatively late in high school, but he consistently built up his own dance language through dance and Asian history studies at the University of New Mexico. He was particularly interested in Asian American identity, and his portrait was featured in the exhibit What is an Asian American at the National Portrait Gallery. He is currently working to train the next generation of great dancers as a dean at George Washington University and as the head of Tai Soon Burgess and Company. Meet Tai Soon Burgess, who has found happiness in his dance and with his partner, performance artist Jameson Freeman, on today's interview.
It's so marvelous to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful place.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, wow. I see so many Asian artifacts, and you travel quite a bit, yes?
I do.
Yeah?
I do. Yeah.
And so are these artifacts from when you've gone traveling?
A lot of them are, and
Yeah?
then some of my family, and yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow, there are some really interesting pieces. What's this?
oh, these are actually from Peru, from a town outside of Cusco, sort of near Machu Picchu.
Nice.
And they bury these amulets in order to ask the land for fertility, like around animals or their fields. And I just think it's such a beautiful concept, so I collect those every time I go back.
Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, they're special.
Thank you.
Wow, it looks like you just really have a lot of creativity in this space. I mean, a lot of the artwork that's on your mantle here, and who's this man? Is this someone in your family?
It is not someone in my family,
No?
but this is a Korean ancestor painting, and I just think it's such a beautiful one.
We don't know who he is, we just know that he was a noble of some kind.
Yeah, like some kind of Yangban, I think.
Wonderful.
A stranger is a journey.
It's lovely.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank you.
Yeah, and I was just kind of turning around and I noticed these incredible doors. What kind of doors are they?
These are
Opium farm
They're-
doors or something.
Wow.
No, they're actually the front of an opium bed.
Oh,
Yeah.
But you didn't use it as a bed, no?
No. But it seemed to work so well in the stairwell. You just like the height of it.
Such a tall space that really gives it a lot of drama.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dana as a person is that he has just such inner beauty and such a desire to connect with the world and with people. And I found that really appealing because I share some of that myself, and I think just his desire to really seek truth through art for him, but also just to connect people. And really, I think he just has a fundamental need to make people feel good. And I just, couldn't see myself with a better person.
Dana, thank you so much for having us in your home for this
it's such
interview.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Yay, great. Well, I think that there are so many people who are very curious about who you are. And of course, everyone knows that you're a choreographer, you're a performance artist, and we're going to get into some nitty-gritty details about what has made you you.
Great. Okay.
Yeah? Are you ready?
I totally am ready.
Okay, full permission to just kind of go in anywhere?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So let's start with what you do.
I really feel that I'm a dance maker, and I love to engage in dance in all its different aspects of creativity. But when I engage in the world and I look around my environment, I just see dances constantly, and I need to go to the dance studio. I need to work with the dancers and create choreography. And that is what I'm driven to do.
Wow. So when you plan to choreograph a dance, do you have some type of theme in mind? Or does it just come by some other inspiration, like a music that you hear?
Yeah, you know, I usually have a theme in mind. And it's interesting, like I talk to a lot of people, and I also read a lot too about different stories, personal stories, historic events, and I research those, and then I decide upon the theme of a dance. And then that really helps form what the movement vocabulary is going to be like also.
Okay.
So if the dance is about a very difficult situation emotionally, then that movement isn't going to be like jumps and leaps and turns, and you know, happy movement is going to be really pulled into the body and much more controlled. So that, you know, all those things come into play.
That's so interesting. For those people that may not be familiar with modern dance, how would you describe what modern dance is?
Oh, modern dance. Modern dance is sort of like jazz, social dance, hip hop, and ballet all combined with some culturally specific dance forms thrown in. It really has a tendency to just envelop more and more dance styles. So it's very, very eclectic. It's a form that you know, has been developing since the late 1800s, and it just continues to grow.
So tell me about when you started dance.
Oh, I started dancing really as a teenager, which is kind of late, right? But the reason I started dancing was that I was a competitive martial artist prior to that. So from age, I guess it was age like 10 or 11 all the way until 16 or 17. And I just love the discipline of martial arts, the focus within it, and also the ability to find like meditation within movement. And I think all of those qualities have really affected my dance style as well.
So while you were doing martial arts, did you ever think that you would try dance? How did that come about?
No, not at all. What happened was I had a friend in high school, and she told me she was a ballet dancer, and I said, oh, that's really interesting. I had never seen a ballet except on TV. And
the tutus and
yeah,
everything.
totally, like Nutcracker or something.
Right.
And I said, oh, can I go with you to dance class? So I went with her to dance class, and I took the class, and I was completely train wreck. I mean, because I'd never seen a dance class, didn't know how it functioned or anything. But after that class, I was so hooked. I just loved it, and I thought, you know, this is that intersection of movement and art that I've been looking for, and ever since then I've been in dance class.
That's incredible. So was it kind of like a love at first sight moment? Like you knew that this is what you wanted to do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it definitely was. Within 10 minutes of that class, I thought, this is the challenge of my life, and it'll just continue to be a challenge, and I can grow with this my whole life, and I just knew that was it.
When he decided to choose dance as a career, did you support him, or did you warn him against it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely.
And I suggested that he utilize his Asian background, but then he took it his own way. I was thinking of more, studying different dance forms in Asia, but he went his own way, and I got into his own choreography, which I think is great.
Yeah, he was warned that it's a very, very tough field, but then we said, go ahead.
One of my happiest moments is when I was a little child in Carmel. My parents had a garden, and I remember running out into the garden one day, and there were all these monarch butterflies flying through, because they must have been on some migration path, or they must have just hatched. I don't know what it was, but I remember just jumping for joy and seeing like all these butterflies and just running. And I think when I have a wonderful dance experience, it feels like being surrounded by those monarch butterflies. Yeah.
One of the really great things about meeting you is knowing that you have such a rich culture and history in your own family. Your family, from what I know, was one of the first families to immigrate to the States in 1903, is that right?
That's true.
And one of the first Korean families to come to Hawaii. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your family.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my great-grandparents came to Hawaii in 1903 and 1904, so on the, two different sides. And they were plantation workers on Oahu, the island, and they essentially raised their children and their children's children on these plantations. And finally, the last daughter, right, which is my mom, is the first one to leave and go to school on the mainland or within the continental United States itself. Wow. So they were quite amazing people, real pioneers.
So you're a fourth generation Korean American, is that right?
Uh-huh.
So your great grandparents and great grandparents also came to Hawaii.
Exactly.
Do you know the reason why your great grandparents decided to come to the States and go to Hawaii at that time?
Yeah, the Japanese were closing off Korea. It was a really difficult time, and so they were able to leave and get out. So they started a whole new life.
That must have been incredible. There's a saying that when people leave their culture at a certain time period, they kind of are a time machine for that time period.
Yeah.
And so I know for my mom's side of the family, when they immigrated in the 70s, they held the values and the cultural kind of aesthetic or the old school ideas of how they should behave with one another from the 70s. So people who immigrate now, they are so much more modern in some ways, or even some of the language is very different. And I imagine that if your family came in the early 1900s, it's a really old school type of Korean kind of ideology and cultural kind of aesthetic too.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's like a cultural time capsule. And I think all those old families, are so interconnected and really share their experiences with one another. And I think it's really based on extremely hard work. It almost has a Confucian value system, that is the kind of underscore of the whole thought process of all those families.
And your parents decided to move there after having lived in Carmel, California, right? How did they decide to go to Santa Fe?
That's a good question that I probably don't even know the full answer to. But they had a friend that was living there that they had gone to college with. And we used to go there for summers to visit. And I think they were really looking for a change in their lives and to create more work and to be inspired. So they went, I think, probably because of the land also.
Very cool. One of the things that I love about Santa Fe, because I lived there for 2 years, several years ago, is that there's just a lot of creativity there. Just everywhere you go, there's art everywhere, visual art. I just imagine that just being in Santa Fe itself just gave you a lot of inspiration, because just that place is like a canvas waiting to be filled.
It really is. It's hard to describe to someone the landscape itself, right? Unless you've been there, because it looks like an abstract painting.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal that you see these huge vistas and this like orange and purple and pink, sunsets. And you just think, how does this color happen in the sky, And that's probably why a lot of visual artists are so attracted to living there, is the light itself and the landscape.
When you left high school, when you left Santa Fe, actually you went to the University of New Mexico to major in dance and Asian history. What was it like for you first?
I think New Mexico is a very different world. And I think that it wasn't necessarily easy. And so for me, being in the dance department there just meant so much, because it was a safe place. It was a place where I could be an artist. And I was developing a language that was like my own language,
And what were some of the classes that you had to take as a dance major?
Technique classes like dance technique, modern, ballet, choreography, composition. All of those classes that sort of like build you as an artist. And then I went to George Washington University and I got a master's degree there, really focusing on making dances and being able to teach better. And I focused my thesis on developing an Asian American aesthetic in dance. So I had that 3 years of just focusing on that.
So when you were focusing on Asian American aesthetics in dance, did you learn a lot of Korean dance and other kinds of Asian dances as well?
Well, you know, I've studied certain like culturally specific dance forms for short periods of time, but it was more about trying to figure out what was the intersection between what had happened to Asian Americans historically, what is happening in our current social context, and then applying that to choreography and seeing, well, how can I make this subject matter, transpose it to dance so that people will understand it in a movement form.
As someone who has studied Asian history and dance, you've kind of used your understanding of the Asian American aesthetic and Asian history, kind of weaving it into your work. Have there been any challenges with that?
I think sometimes the challenge is finding the right personal entry point to creating a piece. Because maybe there's a subject matter that I really want to make a work about, right? But it's such a large subject matter, and it had such a huge impact on like the Asian American community or to a specific country that the only way to tackle it, I think, well, as a choreographer, is to find that personal story. And that personal story can represent the whole experience.
Has he ever invited you to up on the stage to dance with him?
No.
She toured with him one time.
I was, I went to Washington in 2003 when he did the centennial, Korean centennial at the Kennedy Center. We started there, and so I was part of the program. And then we went to Latvia, and then we came back. And in 2005, then we did it again in at the Lincoln Theater.
Wow.
So he did. It was very nice. It was very moving for me, because I thought of my family.
Now, for quite some time, you have been working as a cultural envoy for the U.S. State Department,
Yes.
and I think that's just incredible. I mean, you must be so proud. Your parents must be so proud of you. My goodness, and that's such an honor. And I'm just curious, how did that come about? I mean, I don't doubt the fact that you are extremely talented, and that's why, and you absolutely deserve it. But how did that come about?
You know, there's so many things in my career that were not planned.
Yeah.
There are just these like moments of, you know, miracle moments. And I was performing at the Kennedy Center, and after the show, this representative from the State Department came backstage and handed me their card and said, we'll be calling you if you're interested in having your company tour in the future or you touring in the future. So I really didn't even know that the State Department had this program. So I called, and they called me back, and then, you know, that was about maybe 17 years ago.
So what do you do as a cultural envoy?
As a cultural envoy, I go to different countries, and I really immerse in the community, either myself or with my company, and perform, teach classes, really build friendships with other artists, with students, with the community in general, and, you know, try and let people know all over the world that you can be a creative artist in America, and that America doesn't necessarily, not everyone is like blonde and blue-eyed, and you know, but that actually they see our company and they go, oh, are you all Americans? And we're like, yeah, we all live in America. And so that's interesting too, like even just our presence sort of is...
Helps educate people.
Helps educate, yeah, exactly.
That's incredible. So during the 17 years that you have traveled around the world, you've gone to some incredible places, right?
Yeah.
Egypt, Mongolia, and Jordan, and just the list kind of goes on and on. Is there any favorite place that you've been to as a cultural envoy?
You know, I love Peru. I think Peru is amazing. It's a very spiritual place. It has incredible long history, and So I've been all over Peru on different tours. The company's been there 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
And the artist community is very vibrant there. And also, it's a fascinating culture because they had their president in the past, Fujimori, who's actually was Japanese Peruvian.
Yes.
And I think what's fascinating about that is that the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese are very integrated into that society. And I think that's hopeful.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of countries around the world have probably a lot to kind of learn and kind of hopefully benefit in the future
Yeah,
from,
I totally
from that
agree.
kind of integration. So you've traveled all around the world with your company. So let's talk about your company. The Dana Tai Soon Burgess and Company is, what, 20 years in the making?
Yes, 20 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And it's specifically kind of geared towards helping people see Asian Americans and new Americans
Right.
in a modern dance and contemporary setting, is that right?
Correct. And I think that what's so exciting about it is that there are so few arts organizations, right, that just take on that vision or that mission. And with our company, because we're so active in its modern dance and we're always making more dances, we can continually explore where Asian American consciousness is going. You know, it's not stuck specifically in one repertory dance from like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, but, you know, we're always expanding and changing, and our stories are always changing, like what excites us, what is difficult around us, you know, what we love, all those things. And so it's a great platform to continue to explore that.
So how do you select your dancers? What type of audition process do they go through? Do you just have auditions every couple of years? How
Our
does that work?
audition process is very different. I usually invite a dancer that I've seen to come and take a company class. And then I ask them to take company class for about a month before they become an apprentice, and then from there they move into being a company member. But the reason that I do that is that we're such a tight-knit group of people. I also want to see if their personality will mesh with everyone else, and also see sort of what their story is, because so much inspiration comes from their stories and how open they are about their lives too. So bringing in a new member, you know, it's a big risk, so I always want to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
We visited Dana Tai Soon Burgess's office and rehearsal hall in Washington, D.C., where so many of his works were born. Dana stands in the hall thinking of the most appropriate movements. The music starts and the rehearsal begins. The room falls silent and serious as people watch the rehearsal.
Before I worked with Dana, I was working with many different companies. I wasn't growing in terms of that company, and I wanted to use my skills. And the only company that I wanted to dance for in the DC area that I wasn't dancing for at the time was Dana's company. And he had called me and asked me to audition, and I was just ecstatic about auditioning for him.
Connie says that she was able to grow as a dancer through her work with Dana Burgess. It is his ability to see the talents of each dancer and encourage growth that makes him a great dancer and a great leader. It takes between 6 months and a year to complete a work. Dana pours time and thought into each piece to perfect every detail. He cares for each piece like a loving parent, and that is what makes Dana a true artist in his colleagues' eyes.
In a lot of Dana's work, he incorporates multimedia work, design, projections, video, and the use of props and set design. And it becomes a really integral part of his way to tell his stories.
Dana is a true artist. The way that he tells stories is just amazing, and the detail and the time and the research he does to actually produce a single work is phenomenal.
Dana's passion leads other dancers to work harder to make each piece as perfect as can be. We look forward to seeing more of their beautiful performances on stage all over the world.
So Dana, tell me how you ended up in the National Portrait Gallery, the Smithsonian, in that exhibition of what it means to be an Asian American.
Oh, you know, I got this call one day from Cindy Huang, who's Sijo is her artist name, and she said, a friend of yours has suggested I call you because all the people in that exhibit were sort of referred to her, or you know, a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yes.
And so she said, if you'll come to New York, I'd like to do your portrait. So I was just happened to be in New York, and so I called her, and she said, oh, come over to my studio now. And she just had this open room with a piece of tape on the floor, and she said, okay, just stand there. And so I did, and then she took a bunch of photos, and then I just didn't think about it again. And she just said, you know, my dream is to take all these different photos of Koreans around the world and on that spot. So, so all of a sudden, you know, I was walking around the exhibit because my partner had said, you know, I think you're in the exhibit. I hear you're in the exhibit or something. And so went down and saw it. And then Cindy and I just did a big collaboration in the National Portrait Gallery too. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, you've performed all over the world, and you've been on stage, and you've also been behind the scenes, and you're no stranger to the public eye. But what was it like to be in the Smithsonian? I mean, that's like, that's something really special.
It is special. I think it's special for a couple of reasons, not just personally, but I think it also is raising visibility about Asian Americans, because it's the National Portrait Gallery, but it's their first exhibition that is really about Asian Americans.
Yeah.
And that is extremely important. I was in the Smithsonian's in an exhibit in 2003 for the Korean Centennial that they had, which was really great, and I loved that, being in that also, because it was really traced that 100 years of the families that came to Hawaii, and then, you know. I think that there are a lot of good dancers, but what makes a great dancer is it's an intangible quality, and sometimes I think it's a past life quality. You know, it's almost not trainable or teachable. It is an essence that you are just drawn to them because of their charisma and their energy on stage, and they might do a slightly different timing or nuance the movement differently, and they just catch your eye, and they're an intriguing person. And that makes greatness. And I think when I see great dancing on stage, you know, I'm so appreciative and touched, because dance is so ephemeral. It's there for just a fleeting moment, and to be able to witness greatness is amazing. Yeah.
Doing dance as a career, I think, takes a lot of bravery, because it is a creative endeavor, and you have to live in your heart center to be able to be genuine and true to dance. Do you ever find it tiring to continue to give of yourself from your heart, because it requires you to be so vulnerable at so many times?
I think that I definitely have to have moments to rejuvenate and sort of go away. And I have moments where I'm just working on new dances, teaching, you know, working on the business, etc. And all of a sudden I just have to stop for like 3 weeks, and the only way I can stop is to actually like leave town and just go and sit on a beach, or go, you know, sit somewhere and just think. And that's when creativity comes back, because I think that we, you know, carry with us this bag that just can be depleted, right? And so you have to refill it, and in order to give more.
Just recharge that battery so that you can really get refreshed. With dancing, I'm imagining that not all of it's fun. That there must be some downside to dancing, as any career. Even as much as I love broadcasting work, you know, not everything is always happy. There are always some areas of stress. What would they be for dancing for you personally?
I think it would be fatigue. You know, it's like having these schedules where you're taking a dance class, you're at a rehearsal, the next morning you're at another rehearsal or you're at another job. Then around showtime, you're in the theater maybe at 8 a.m., getting out at around midnight for like 3 or 4 days in a row. So it really is that. And I think for a director, that then gets compounded with needing to make sure that the health of the business is going well, because every one of those dancers now represents somebody that you have to take care of. And so that's, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's the downside, but the upside is that every one of those dancers that you're taking care of and every piece of art being made is satisfying, you know?
Of all of the stories that you've created and all the dances that you've created, if you had to pick the top 3, what would they be?
Oh, the top 3.
Yeah.
I would pick Becoming American, which is about one of our dancers who's a Korean adoptee. I would pick Island, about Chinese immigration in the late 1800s. And I would pick Charlie Chan and the Mystery of Love, which is this autobiographic piece. And I felt like it was such a, it took me like 20 years almost, you know, to finally do an autobiographic piece, because I was doing everybody else's stories and, it, you know, sort of avoiding my own probably. And it was a huge, I think, moment of creative growth.
Wow.
I was adopted with my brother at a very young age. I was 2.5 when I came to this country. And we started off with my story, which was that I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and I had a great childhood, but I felt very much like I didn't know where my community was, just because I looked different and I, you know, felt different, but my culture was American for me. And so this piece really talks about all those feelings, the feelings of feeling isolated and then being a part of a group and feeling like you find comfort within yourself too.
Alma mía, oye mi bien, ese tu rebozo verde mar, aquel que para ti tu sagalejo tiene el reflejo de mi pasión, rojo de sangre y de amor.
You help so many children and a lot of the youth in this area with your youth development program. Please tell me about your youth development program and the catalyst for that.
Oh, sure. I'm really proud about that program, and I think it was developed because of the way I grew up. Like, I wish I had a program like that. And it is a program that brings together high school students who are of different just Asian and Asian American backgrounds, and it's like a peer mentoring group. So they come together a couple times a week and talk about subjects that they're interested in. We talk about identity, and then we do video projects. And I always have them choose, like, what video project would you like to do? So for instance, one time they did an identity video, and they just talked about like who they were, what their identities were, and then they want to do a music video. So they played all the instruments, they sang, they wrote the song, and yeah, they're incredible.
So creative.
And this last video is very interesting because I think it's much more rich and vulnerable in a sense in terms of what they're talking about, about their identity, about fitting in as an Asian American. We have a lot of actually Amerasians also that is becoming a really large population in Asian America, right?
Yeah.
And so it's great to talk to them too and hear about, you know, do you feel like you're stuck in two worlds, or are you, you know, feeling good about, you know, how the outside world sees you versus how you might feel inside about yourself. So we ask all those questions, and they are great kids.
Oh, that's so great. How did you decide to start that program, and do you receive some funding from some other organizations for that?
We receive funding from the Mayor's Office on Asian Pacific Islander Affairs, and also from Wells Fargo, which is great. And
that's a huge bank, and they're just giving you all grants, or just
a grant. So it's so nice, and we're really, you know, I just felt like it had to be started, and we would find the funding, and so it did. Yeah.
It's like build it and they will come.
Right, exactly.
Dana, if you had to give young dancers advice about what they need to be prepared for a professional career, what would you say?
I would really tell them to follow their own voice, you know, to follow what their dream is, to not put up with abusive behavior in the studio, to not abuse their bodies, because that is like their career, right? And to really get as much education as possible to get out of the studio, because no choreographer ultimately just wants a dancer that has grown up in front of a mirror. You know, we want dancers that have experienced life and have thoughts of their own, and are also team players.
Dana Tai Soon Burgess's Asian American Youth Program reflects the issues he grappled with in his own youth. Isolation and confusion stemming from an Asian American identity. Dana's understanding of these emotions is why he has kept the program running for many years.
Hi, I'm Emily Taylor Fullerton, and I'm 16 years old. I think that it's really cool to be like half and half, you know, because you're a part of like two different cultures, and you're not, you know, like, I think it's cool to be considered two different things instead of just one.
Hello, my name is Naminga, and I'm an exchange student from South Korea. I'm looking for what I want to do and what I really like to do.
Well, I like soccer because I'm not as good with my hands as I am with my feet, I guess. And I mean, I've been playing since I was younger, so I've been doing it for a long time. So I consider myself half Asian, half white. That's exactly what I am, and my culture comes from the U.S., so I don't really have an Asian culture per se, or European culture about me, but yeah, pretty much just American in the way I think and feel about things.
Dana mentors these youth to never stop dreaming, to pursue their passions. He provides an important learning experience that is crucial in American society, where more and more Asian Americans are entering adulthood. A while ago, he and his students produced a music video showcasing their stories and talents. Dana goes beyond his career as a dancer to give hope and positive energy to the next generation of Asian Americans. His efforts will surely become a foundation on which these youth will grow into the leaders of tomorrow's America.
Switching gears to you and your personal life, I hear that you love traveling, just personally, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
And that last summer, when you traveled to Cambodia with your partner, there was a very special thing that happened.
And that's true.
Yes, can you tell me about what happened?
Yes, So, James and I are going to go see Angkor Wat, right? So we get up really early in the morning to get that photo of the lake and the sunrise, and so by about 11 in the morning, you know, it's like, you know, it feels like it's 200 degrees and it's so humid.
Yes.
We walk up to the top stupa, and he grabs my hand, and I was like, what do you want? Because I don't know where the restroom is, I don't know where the water is, I'm really sorry. He said, no, I need to talk to you about something. And I was like, well, what? And then he said, oh, will you marry me? And so I just looked at him and I said, well, of course. There was no question. But it was such an amazing moment to be at that top stupa of Angkor Wat. You know, it was just energetically amazing. So.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm so lucky.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and he seems like a really wonderful guy.
He is. He's amazing.
Now you are a dancer, and he's also a performance artist. So
Right.
you must have so much in common in that way.
Yeah, we
that
talk a lot about art, and I think it's constantly about like creativity, about what an audience member is perceiving, what we're thinking we're making, all those things. So it's great to just have a confidant like that.
Are you able to give each other really honest feedback about the performances, or if there's something that you don't like about each other's performances?
Yeah.
Can
Sure,
you
I think that's
criticizing each other?
Yeah, and I think that's all, that's part of the relationship too, is like to be honest. And I think it all comes down to whenever you're commenting about any artist's work, it's like constructive criticism, and we all need it. Like so, yeah.
Aside from Jameson, do you have other people that you feel that you can go to for constructive criticism?
Oh, I mean, my parents, of course, right? That's constructive criticism.
Yes.
And the dancers themselves. There's several dancers in the company specifically that I can just ask them a question like, does that feel like it's working? Does that look like it's working? Do you know what that means? And they'll just immediately respond. And what they respond with is like it's always correct. And so it's nice to have that barometer in the studio itself. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I have to say, I mean, I truly consider myself his #1 fan, and I'm very proud to say that. But second of all, I think that Dana is a really amazing storyteller, and I don't think that he gives himself credit for that enough, because he uses amazing mixed media and technology and lighting, and his dancers are just, I mean, beautiful and technically so talented. And
I think the great characteristic that Dana brings to bear is his talent, of course, which is enormous, but also his desire to share his experiences with others, both our students and people around the world, and that energy and enthusiasm for dance and how it can express his artistic intentions, but even go transcend that sort of limited artistic domain and really communicate to everybody about what he feels and what he thinks. He has this tremendous passion for changing the world through the arts, and I think that's incredibly exciting.
We're proud of him.
Yeah.
We're proud of him that he's done something that he wanted to do, and not many people have a chance to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's important for him personally and us as a family, and I think his touring is important for the country. It builds up linkages.
Yes. Dana, I have a couple more questions, and then we probably have to close the interview, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But what are your biggest strengths?
Biggest strengths?
Yes. Top 3.
I think generosity, patience, and love.
And greatest weaknesses?
Oh, pushover is one. Second guessing sometimes. And I think not visualizing large enough. And I'm constantly saying to myself, the biggest dream that I can have at this moment, there's actually a bigger one. Like there's a bigger, more expansive dream. And I think what I often feel just maybe about, all consciousness is that the biggest weakness is not being able to expand outside of our own limitations in just thought. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you're very critical of yourself, or you're very supportive of yourself?
Oh, I think it depends on the day.
Yeah.
I think I can be very critical of myself, and I fight that a lot. I think I want to really do a perfect job at whatever I'm working on, and I want everyone around me to feel great, and I want to be supportive in that way. And so I think when there are situations where I can't be there 100%. Like I feel a lot of guilt about things like that. And
Oh, that's very Korean.
it's so great. We're back to the plantation,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely.
Guilt is a part of
I
our
mean,
lives.
it's just like I think, oh, I should do more. I can be more generous. I can be, all those things,
Not
run
giving
through my
enough,
mind.
yeah.
Exactly. Like I'm not doing a good enough job. All those things run through. And what's so nice is that I have such a supportive partner and friends and family and dancers that we all recognize that we're all human, and so we all support each other like so much. But I think that I need to probably learn to honor that in myself more. Yeah.
Dana, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Not just for our students, but for the entire Washington, D.C. community, and frankly, the whole world community. Through your artistic expression, you've reached out and touched all of us, and we look forward to you doing that for many more years here at the George Washington University.
Dana, I've been asked to say a few words to you. I want to tell you that I hope you know you are so loved, of course by me, but by so many. And I am so thrilled that you are being shared with Susan's audience, so that people can just know your art and know you and know how magical you are. And you're just an absolutely marvelous and special person, and very loved by many.
I mean, with just even spending this brief time with you and some of our pre-interviews, it's been so wonderful to get to know you, and I really appreciate just your vulnerability and just your generosity of spirit, and you've inspired me to just take up dance a little bit again.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
this was so
thank you.
nice.
It was
I
so
really
wonderful.
appreciate it.
Oh, likewise. I can't wait to hear all about the awesome things that you'll be doing in the future. So we'll definitely have to keep in touch.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. If I was speaking to a very talented dancer that had all the, the right body type, the right training, had that certain joie de vivre, that certain something that was going to make them great, I would say that they need to not fall into feeling bad about themselves if they get criticism, but to always follow their path, and that there are always moments within art where you feel these ups and downs about how your art is being perceived, and the best thing one can do is stay on that direct path and not listen too much about what other people are saying about the work, but focus on what you think will enhance that greatness, and you'll find the way.